What's happening, everybody? It's Sean with Reactions to the Classics, and today we got the top 10 American underground / alternative rock bands of the 1980s, part 2. Brought to us by a friend, longtime supporter, and patron of the channel, SlaydeSaid. Thank you, SlaydeSaid. He brought me a great part 1, which I'll link on the end screen of this video that I just absolutely love. So he went ahead and queued up part 2. And Slade said, strictly speaking, that would make this list top 11 through 20, but to be honest, some of these bands are just as good as any of the bands in the first list, so any number on the list shouldn't be taken too seriously, although I did put some thought into the individual position on the list itself. So we're going to jump right in, but before we do, the music will not be in this video, but it'll be at a Vimeo link below if you'd like to follow along. And number 10 is They Might Be Giants. We're going to go with the song, you see it below, Don't Let's Start. Slade said Brooklyn's They Might Be Giants started as a duo consisting of guitarist and singer John Flansburgh and John Linnell on accordion. The drums were performed by a drum machine, and this lineup consisted for a good number of years until the early 1990s. They Might Be Giants sounds like nothing else on this list, with its nerdy humor and desire to make weird pop, and whose sound not only changes a lot from album to album, but not one song sounds like the one before. Picking one song, therefore, as a representative of how the band sounds is a difficult task indeed. The song, the very poppy single, Don't Let's Start, from their self-titled debut from 1986, was the first one I ever heard by the band and was good enough back then to get me interested in the band, so we'll go with that. I found they have released, yes, this is amazing, 23 studio albums. This was their debut single, went to 94 in Australia. The lyrics include a number of dark, pointed statements. John has repeatedly insisted that some of the song's lyrical twists, though pondered extensively by fans, were constructed to complement the melody and were not necessarily meaningful. Asked about the origin of the song's obscure lyrics, he replied, "Where did it come from? I made it up." And sometimes it's that way, right? We try to break these lyrics down and they actually don't mean anything. A lot of these bands I've heard of, I think only one or two I've actually listened to a song at all from, so this will be a new adventure for me. Thanks again, Slade said. Don't Let's Start, a very quick song. I can see it's very catchy. I'm not even going to break down the lyrics because I see how they're nonsensical, and if you try to break these down, you'd spend forever just trying to speculate what they meant, but enjoy the sound. You can tell there's a drum machine on there, but it's not distracting at all. It's 1986. There were a lot of drum machines floating around, boys and girls. So yeah, just a fun little tune. Now we move on to the next group. We got Wipers, their song Romeo. Slade said, we move on from the most commercially sounding song on the list to the most punk-like song. Essentially the brainchild of guitarist and vocalist Greg Sage, the Portland, Oregon band Wipers was an underground rock-punk rock band that formed in the late 1970s and had a recording career between 1980 to 1999. Greg Sage is an excellent guitarist who unfortunately never has received the appreciation he truly deserved. Romeo, this song, is taken from the band's third album, the excellent Over the Edge from 1983. This album is a must-listen for anyone with an interest in 1980s punk rock. I found it as their second single. They're considered the first Pacific Northwest punk band. They had an influence on Nirvana. Wipers gained significant exposure as a result of Nirvana's 1992 cover of two songs from Is This Is Real. D7 on the EP Hormoning and Return of the Rat on the 8 Songs compilation. And Nirvana frontman Kurt Cobain's mention of Wipers was a major influence. The Wipers were influential for the grunge scene in general, also being cited by the Melvins, Mudhoney, and Dinosaur Jr. So not the last time that Kurt is going to appear on this list. Another funny thing is I'd never heard of Wipers. I'd done this research, and then just yesterday, somebody commented on one of the YouTube comments. It suggested not this song, but a Wiper song. I'm like, that's crazy, man, because I never heard of them. Now I hear of them twice in 2 days. Romeo, it's punk rock, man. It really isn't about the lyrics. The guitar work in here is fantastic from Greg, and his voice suffices, right? Punk rock, we don't have a lot of songbirds in punk rock. I thought there's a menacing part to the song, which is kind of what it's all about, because he's starting out walking the city at night. You know, and in the bridge, around the corners, there's nothing there, nothing there, nothing there. Juliet, Juliet, well, there's nothing. There's no Juliet, babe, woo. And I just thought it was really well done, man. I thought, like I said, Greg's guitar work was fantastic. It set this nice ambiance. So really did enjoy that. I'm going to check out more Wipers. Now we move on to number 8. You see it below. We got Minutemen, the song Corona. Slade said, hands up, everyone who wants to talk more about Corona. Well, even if you didn't raise your hand, you're going to have to, as that is the song title of the next pick. The song Corona is by experimental punk rock band Minutemen. Minutemen was a trio from San Pedro, California, whose sound included everything from hardcore punk to jazz, funk, and folk. That's quite the diversity there. The band's name Minutemen has been said to refer to their songs, which were often only about a minute long, This one's not, by the way. But it's actually based on the name of the partisan militia during the American Revolutionary War, where they were famous for being ready at a minute's notice. Minutemen consisted of Mike Watt on bass, D. Boone on guitars, and George Hurley on drums. On pure technical skills alone, the trio was one of the absolute best within punk rock of the 1980s, which is probably also why they were so experimental with their sound. They could have been big if they had lasted longer, but unfortunately D. Boone and his girlfriend were killed in a fatal car accident in December 1985. Mike Watt and George Hurley didn't want to carry on, but a fan of the band persuaded them to keep making music, and so, along with the fan, guitarist Ed Crawford, they formed the band Firehose, which lowercase f and all the rest of it's capitalized, who released several records in the 80s and the 90s, but that's a story for another list. Their absolute masterpiece, Double Nickels on the Dime, was released in 1984, which has proven to be one of the best and most important years ever within alternative rock and punk rock, since this was the year that Husker Du released Zen Arcade, REM released Reckoning, the Dream Syndicate released The Medicine Show, and Meat Puppets released Meat Puppets 2, which we'll discuss later on this list. A little spoiler alert to name a few. Double Nickels on the Dimes was a double album consisting of no less than 43 songs. As such, it's pretty demanding of the listener and requires a few spins to settle, but one song is easy to get into, and it should be very familiar to those who watch the MTV show Jackass. What a spoiler. I found this was named after a brand of Mexican beer, Corona. Well, boys and girls, this is way before we had what we're dealing with the COVID-19. It's a protest song. It's inspired by a day trip the band had taken to Mexico on the 4th of July, 1982. Moved by his witnessing of some of the more downtrodden elements of the area, Boone set about writing a song in sympathy with the Mexican people. Corona. Great guitar work there by D. Boone and all of it. I mean, George Hurley on the drums, Mike Watt on the bass, D. Boone's vocals work for this song. 3 verses, no chorus, short and sweet. My favorite song so far, and I know we're doing artists, so it's kind of weird, but it's my favorite song so far. Verse 3, they're on the beach, I could see it in her eyes. I only had a Corona 5-cent deposit. So this girl's seen him just because she can get 5 cents back for that Corona, because that's how impoverished they are. So pretty good lyrics on this one as well. So I did enjoy this one. Now, SlaydeSaid knows a lot about music. I'm telling you a lot, right? Because we got a lot of members in this community who know a lot about music. And SlaydeSaid, and the stuff that he knows a ton. And I say that because we're going over to YouTube for this, because we're going to choose a group here. Well, we're not. SlaydeSaid is. He's going to choose a group that there isn't even a wiki on. There's not even any lyrics for this song. And none of their stuff is anywhere on streaming, but there is a YouTube video where I'm going to pull the song from. We got Jonesbury. We go with the song Ash and Dust. SlaydeSaid Jonesbury was a punk rock band from Massachusetts led by guitarist and singer Vic Bondi, who had previously been a member of Chicago hardcore punk band Articles of Faith. Outside making music, Vic is also a history teacher at the University of Massachusetts, Boston, where he earned a PhD in history in 1992. The band name Jonesbury was based on the poet and mystic of the same name, keeping in line with Vic Bondi's interest in historic figures. As a band, Jonesbury was far less complex and experimental compared to Minutemen, even if they were also a trio consisting of guitars, bass, and drums. Just goes to show how different a sound event this simple set of instruments can make. I picked the song Ash and Dust from the band's debut album, Words and Days, which was released in 1989. Jonesbury, Ash and Dust. The way it worked, I was actually had it on the YouTube. It's just the song playing, but the lyrics popped up whenever he was singing them. But it's really hard to process when they're just coming up line by line and then they're gone. So I'm not really going to break down to you what the songs, but I think it's just live your life how you want things changed. But don't hold me to that, because I'm trying to focus on the instrumentation, the vocals. The instrumentation was fantastic, man. I just thought it was really, really well done. And Vic's guitar playing is fantastic, and his singing is pretty good too. The drumming is great, bass was great. It's right on. I like this song the best, right, of everything we've heard. But I mean this song only has 50 views on YouTube. So this is a very, very, very under the radar group, but man, I enjoyed that song. Now we're up to number 6. We're gonna pop into a group that I do know the name of, just because when you have a name like this, it's memorable. I don't know any of their stuff, but we got Meat Puppets. We're gonna go with the song Lake of Fire. SlaydeSaid Meat Puppets were one of the big underground names in the punk scene in the 1980s. They became more famous than ever when Nirvana covered 3 of their songs for their Unplugged show on MTV. Originally a pure hardcore punk band, by their second album, Meat Puppets 2 from 1984, they had matured a lot and evolved into a unique mixture of punk, country, and psychedelic rock. The album is widely considered their magnum opus, and I do not disagree with that. The main members of the band are the 2 brothers, Chris on bass and Kurt on guitars and vocals. Kirkwood, who formed the band along with drummer Derek Brostrom. For this list, I went with Lake of Fire, one of the songs covered by Nirvana, and I found Kurt said, I lived with Chris and Derek and probably Chris's girlfriend, Kelly. They went to a Halloween party and I was disgruntled because I thought it was nonsense that adults should callously attempt to alter their appearances, that we are already sufficiently foul. I was younger then. I just said, talk about man's fall from grace. This is it. He also described the song as a toss-off and a cartoon. Lake of Fire, which Kurt also said that it was a cartoon he expanded on in this other quote about the idea of the whole Catholic nature of evil. So I think you get that in the chorus. Where do bad folks go when they die? They don't go to heaven where the angels fly. They go to a lake of fire and fry. Won't see them again until the 4th of July. Verse 1, a woman gets bit by a rabid dog. And verse 2, people cry and people moan and look for a dry place to call their home and try to find some place to rest their bones before the angels and the devils fight to make them their own. So, I mean, very short, 2 verses and some choruses in here. It actually starts with the chorus. So you got 3 choruses. You go chorus, verse, chorus, verse, chorus, which is a way to make a song kind of stick out in your head more. It's a technique used a lot in shorter songs like this one. This one was under 2 minutes long. Shout out to Derek on the drumming. Like, drumming's pivotal to any song if you understand music theory, but on this one, it's so low key, the drumming, dun, dun, but it's pivotal to driving the song. Obviously, the guitar work is the star on this from Kurt. And Chris's bass work is nice too. But I did enjoy that one. Now we go to another band that I've heard of, and I actually know one song from them, but that's way later after this. It's Timbuk 3, going with Standard White Jesus. Slade said Timbuk 3 is absolutely the slacker band on this list. They have almost a lazy sound and way of singing. They sound like hippies from the 1960s. Originally just a duo consisting of married couple Pat and Barbara McDonald. They played a mostly acoustic version of alternative rock with Pat on guitars and vocals, and Barbara playing drums and harmonizing on the vocals while the drums are played by a drum machine. From their 4th album, they included a real drummer and a second guitarist, but that was in 1991. So for obvious reasons, we can't include any of that here. The original sound owed a lot to 1960s folk and psychedelic rock, and to me, their 3rd album, 1989's Edge of Allegiance, is the best from that era. The track Standard White Jesus is picked from that album, and they sang the song The Future's So Bright, I Gotta Wear Shades. Standard White Jesus, an interesting song for me as a Christian, right, as it unfolds, and, you know, the chorus. So I did a little more digging here, but, you know, in the chorus, he says, better bow down to the standard white Jesus on the cross. Repeats that a few times, and then, and read the letters that the children write to the standard white Santa Claus. So I was reading, and Pat said he went to a Catholic school growing up, and when he found out, I hope no kids are watching this, that Santa Claus wasn't real. I hope they're not listening in the background, sheesh. That then he figured out that Jesus wasn't real either. That was his mentality, that, you know, Jesus wasn't real either. They were both just made up to make the kids act right. As a Christian, to me, that's insanity. You came from somewhere. You didn't come from dust, but I won't get into all of that. But I don't know if it's just a total diss to Jesus here, because the standard white Jesus is something that's spreading throughout the United States where I live, where, you know, Jesus is not what he's portrayed to be by a lot of, quote, religious people. There's a lion and lamb side to him, right? And so I won't get into all of that. But so you kind of see that part of it, because a lot of the Christian church in America I absolutely don't identify with whatsoever. So I did enjoy the sound. It's definitely different. You take something like that and you go to something like Wipers or Meat Puppets. What a disparity there in how they sound. Yet both have their own nuances and beauty to them. I thought the way Pat and Barbara sing off of each other, and they're not really in harmony. They're just kind of the lazy and slacker way that Slade said described this was perfect, man. So I did enjoy that one. You see it below, number 4, going with Jane's Addiction, a group that I do know a few songs from and a little bit about them. Never listened to an album. We're going with the song Ocean Size. Slade said, okay, so this inclusion might be somewhat debatable for a number of reasons. First of all, Jane's Addiction is probably more obvious for an alternative metal list, should I ever make one such. And their best album is arguably the 9th album from 1990, Ritual, D-Low, Habitual. With all that said, I still chose to include it here. Their style is definitely also relevant for an alternative underground rock list, and the album Nothing Shocking is very close in quality to the follow-up. In fact, I see that All Music rates Nothing Shocking as their best with 5 out of 5 stars, so I feel justified to having it here. Also, I'm on part 2 of the top 10 list for the 90s, which I'll probably do next month, so be on the lookout for that. It's becoming way too big, so I chose to include it here. So I like it because Slade said before in the comments people said they don't belong here. He went ahead and addressed that concern. Smart man. Jane's Addiction's a band from Los Angeles, California. The band was known for being provocative and pushing boundaries, but whether or not you like their public image, the quality of their music was hard to deny. They definitely peaked artistically with 1988's Nothing Shocking and 1990's Ritual, D-Lo, Habitual, after which they went on a long hiatus to return with 2 albums much later, 2003's Strays and 2011's The Great Escape, both of which are in fact very good albums, but I don't compare to their earlier output, neither in overall quality or musical exploration. For this list, I went with the song Ocean Size, I mentioned earlier. This album's number 312 on the Rolling Stone list of 500 greatest albums of all time, by the way. Perry Farrell and Dave Navarro also were in this group. They became, famous outside of the group. Also created Lollapalooza as their farewell tour initially, so, definitely grown from there. MTV exposure really helped these guys. That's how I know them. I know a couple of their videos from back in the day, but I don't know this song. Ocean Size. I see that it's described on janesaddiction.org as about being homeless. Talks about how a strong heart can be broken, but the ocean itself adjusts to whatever's around it, able to wear anything down, always empowered and dauntless. The singer wants to give up his hard-hearted nature and be truly strong. And that's kind of what I got out of this, right? Wish I was an ocean that cannot move you, man. No one tries, no one pulls you out from your hole like a tooth aching, a jawbone. Oh, so if he's homeless and people are yanking on him, trying to throw him out, and just this world yanking on him, right? I was made with a heart of stone to be broken with one hard blow. I've seen the ocean break on the shore, come together with no harm done. And then the bridge, it ain't easy living in the course. I want to be as deep as the ocean, Mother Ocean. Yeah, great guitar work on here. Perry's vocals are really good and just really a well put together song, man. Up there in contention for my fave, right? So far. That was really good. Now we go to number 3. We got House of Freaks. We're going with the song Sun Gone Down. Slade said House of Freaks from Richmond, Virginia is another duo on the list. The duo consisted of Brian Harvey on guitars and vocals and Johnny Hott on drums. Since the band had no bass player, they had to be more creative with the guitar sound and song structure, and so they developed a pretty unique rock sound where you actually very rarely consider that something is missing. The band released 4 full-length albums from 87 to 94, with their best album being the second album, Tantala, from 1989. From this album, the rocking Sun Gone Down is picked. It is one of the best straight-out alternative rock songs of the decade. Now, that is a statement for anybody to make, but Slade said obviously knows this stuff inside and out, so that's a huge statement for him to make. With a fantastic hook and a great chorus, it became a small hit back then, but it should have been gigantic for the duo. Yes, I know this is quite the build-up for the song, but I doubt you will disagree when you've heard it. And there's a tragic story on here as well, and that's why this band didn't continue. But Brian and his family lost their lives, so man. But all right, let's check it out. Sun Goes Down, man, that song was freaking fantastic. Slade said was not blowing smoke. Man, that was good. Brian's guitars and vocals and Johnny's drum. It was just so good, right? It was so catchy. And I don't know about the subject of it, it's just one of those things, a house up on the hillside, all these kind of creepy things, a hellhound in the yard, and there he's standing guard and watching. People look through the window, a casket inside. Today's the day. Today's the day, he day by Roadside. Wind blows hard, the wind blows cold, sun goes down, I'll meet you on that lonesome dark road, sun goes down, and meet him on the other side of the town, the graveyard next to the empty tomb. Just such a catchy song. Slade said also that in 1993, both Harvey and Hott joined the Paisley Underground supergroup side project, Gutterball. Other members were Steve Wynn from the Dream Syndicate, Stephen McCarthy from the Long Riders, and Bob Root from the Silos. Slade said, I actually had the pleasure to meet the band at a concert where I spoke with them in the back room after the show. Both Brian Harvey and Steve Wynn were the most pleasant and nice people you could ever meet. That is always good to hear. But wow, what a fantastic song. I'm going to have to go listen to this album later because that was great. Now, I don't know how we're really going to top that song, but remember, this isn't songs, it's groups, and he's just picking a song from the group. So at number 2, we got the group Galaxy 500 and the song Strange. Slade said Boston, Massachusetts trio Galaxy 500 consisted of Dean Wareham on guitars and vocals, bassist Naomi Yang, and drummer Damon Krukowski. They played a special brand of dream rock as opposed to dream pop, where Dean's dreamy guitars and vocals float on top of the subtle rhythm section, creating a sound that really doesn't sound like any other band. Now that's intriguing to me. The Sherwood Band released 3 full-length albums from 88 to 94, disbanded in 1991, with Dean forming Luna, while Naomi and Damon formed the duo Damon and Naomi. The band's most acclaimed album is their second album, On Fire, even if I personally think that their final album, 1990's This Is Our Magic, just edges it, but I decided to follow the masses here and go with the great song Strange from On Fire. Side note, the album includes a very good cover of George Harrison's Isn't It a Pity? I definitely am going to go listen to that. And actually, I have them. If you follow along with the channel, Trey and I are doing every week, we're doing a top 5 album draft. We each pick 5 albums from each year. And I did add Galaxy 500 on to my list with a couple albums from the 80s. And this is going to be one of those albums. So at least I'll get a little sneak preview here. Strange. Really dug the sound. It was interesting because until the last maybe third of the song, Damon's drumming was actually mixed to the forefront, was the predominant driving instrument. And then, Dean comes in towards the end there on the guitars. I thought his vocals were pretty good as well. Now, there's a couple different origins of the song. In a live performance at Sydney, Dean said, "This is a song about a time I dropped acid with a couple of friends of mine." But then in Pitchfork, he said, "Strange is about waiting in line to buy Twinkies at a convenience store on Massachusetts Avenue. I ate Twinkies for dessert at lunchtime almost every day when I lived in Boston." So there's not much to the song. He just, verse 1, why is everybody acting funny? Why is everybody looking so strange? Why is everybody so nasty? What do I want with all these things? So you could picture an acid trip. I've never been on an acid trip, but I picture that's what it'd be like. And then, of course, I went alone down to the drugstore. I went in back and took a Coke. I stood in line and ate my Twinkies. I stood in line. I had to wait. And that's just kind of how the song, it just repeats itself, that same verse and chorus. And then we get the na-na-na-na-na-na. It just has this texture to it and this atmosphere musically that I super enjoyed. So I'm looking forward to listening to their albums. Well, now we're to number 1 on SlaydeSaid's Top 10 American Underground / Alternative Rock Bands of the 1980s, Part 2. You see it below. We have Swans, not the Swans. It's just Swans. People get this wrong all the time. It's always weird when a band has a name and it doesn't start with the, but it's just Swans. We're going with the tune Our Love Lies. And Slade said, "I know that you reacted to a song or two by Swans on this channel, and I recall that you weren't really convinced about them. So you will probably not agree with me placing them here at number 1. However, in terms of output, importance, and creativity, they absolutely deserve this spot in my opinion. While band effort, New York-based Swans would be nothing without main member Michael Gira, who is the undisputed band leader, singer, songwriter, and guitarist. Formed in 1992, the band has many different phases, with focus on certain soundscapes for a number of albums and changing it for a new direction for a number of records before changing it again. The sound is almost always dark, which is what ties the overall output together, apart, of course, from Michael's deep voice. Swans is definitely the most industrial and noise rock sounding band on this list when they want to do that, but they can also be devastatingly beautiful and dreamy. They can sound accessible with lovely choruses, and they can sound brutal and do 20-plus minute songs where they repeat a certain rhythm or guitar progression over and over with an almost hypnotizing effect. Lyrics-wise, Michael is clearly inspired by religion, although I don't know if he's actually religious or a Christian. Picking his song for this list is tricky. Like our opening act, They Might Be Giants, the band sounds very different between each phase and album. For the 1980s, though, the album Children of God from 1987 is generally considered the best, and I'll pick a song from that excellent album. In the song Our Love Lies, Michael sounds as dark and deep as he ever has, but Jarboe's backup vocals are soothing and manage to show a light in all the darkness. Swans were extremely prolific. We got 15 studio albums, 11 live albums, 7 comp albums, and 11 EPs. Now, here's what's funny. At this time, we just put up 1981 for our top 5 albums. Like I said, we put up 1 a week. Trey picks 5, I pick 5. But we work way ahead, right? Because we film 4 or 5 at a time because, things get busy on this channel, man. Trying to squeeze in something outside of Patron requests and other things is difficult. So we record ahead. So I make a list of albums that I haven't heard. And even though I'm an 80s child, tons of albums in the 80s that were actually good, I've never heard of. So this album was on the 1987 list because, as Slade said, it's extremely critically acclaimed. So I actually listened to this album yesterday. Now, it's a long album, so I don't remember this song. But I remember I asked Trey, we had a discussion about it. I said, "Hey, man, have you listened to that Swans album?" He's like, "Yeah." I'm like, "It's pretty tough. It's pretty tough to get through. So in that, I'm telling you, I liked like 3 songs off. It was my first time listening to it. I know Swans is critically acclaimed. I want to like them, but as Slade said in the start, I just don't really. And this album didn't change my mind. But let's see what I think of this song. And I do understand how influential they are. I don't know why I don't get them, but Trey doesn't either. But let's check it out. Our Love Lies. If you're watching this, I was trying to play it really straight, right? So you wouldn't know whether this was one of the 3 songs that I say 3. I don't remember how many I enjoyed. It was somewhere of that nature off this album. Yes, it was. This song is great. I really, really like the song. And I like it a lot more even the second time on hearing it. But I mean, there is 15 songs or 14 songs on this album. So like this one, like no one stands out when you're sitting and listening to them in one sitting. But on the second listen to this song, it's great, you know, and there really is a good dichotomy, as Slade said, referenced on the description of this song, in Michael's vocals, which are so deep and striking, and then Jarboe coming in and softening it up. There's a lot of instrumentation on here. It just works really, really well. I mean, it doesn't feel like 5 and almost 6 minutes long. And there is definitely religious themes, as Slade said, discussed. We'll fall down on broken knees and we'll cry for you now. We'll cry for your mercy. And then the refrain, we believe in love. God save us now. We believe in love. And that refrain kind of just keeps going on through here at the very end. God save us now. God save us now. We believe in love. God save us, please. So the song itself, fantastic. Which brings me to my favorites, which is weird. I say this every time. When I'm doing a top 10 of bands, right, or artists and not songs, it's weird to pick your favorite because, you know, Slade said picked a song to represent this group. It doesn't necessarily mean that I would like the group themselves or that I would dislike the group if I didn't like the song. But with that said, those are the parameters that we have here. So honorable mention, got to go Minutemen Corona. Not just because I recognize it, obviously, just the opening riff from being the Jackass theme, but I thought it was really well done. Meat Puppets, Lake of Fire, I'll throw an honorable mention to them as well. Faves, it's going to be a decent amount of them. We got to go Jane's Addiction with the Ocean Size track. We got to go Galaxy 500 with Strange. And even though I told you I already have an opinion on this album and maybe on this band, I got to go Swans because Our Love Lies is fantastic. My 2 faves, Jonesbury, Ash and Dust, the one that was only on YouTube that had 50 views, and my very fave, Slade said, called this House of Freaks, Sun Gone Down, just fantastic. So thank you everybody for joining along. Let me know your favorites below. Slade said thank you for curating another fantastic list of bands that maybe I'd heard a song or 2 from a couple of them, but otherwise I'd never heard of most of them and definitely never heard any music from them. If you want to be a patron, support us anyway like Slade said does, check out the Patreon link below or the Patreon link on the end screen. We greatly appreciate it. It makes it possible for us to produce content every single day. I'll also link part 1 of this list in the end screen, so check that out. Until next time, guys, I will see ya.